Hey everyone, welcome to the Millionaire Recruiter channel. I'm Emily. Today we're going to be going over how to be of the most value to your clients. I'm going to go over a resume and an intake that was sent out from my teammate. I'm going to format it and show you how I would send it to a client so that I'm being of the most value to them. We'll do a screen share right now. Let's go.
Okay, hey everybody. So we're going to go over how I can be of the most value to our clients. So of course we're finding them resumes and we're sourcing people to send over to their team to review and interview. But beyond just being someone that sends over resumes, we want to give them a really valuable intake. And what an intake is just all of our thoughts on our call with the candidate, and then also really specifically what the candidate's looking for in the next role so that they can use this information to decide if they're a good fit for their team. They can also use this information to decide how quickly they need to move their interview process along, as well as use the information we give them to close the candidate later on when it comes to things like the salary, when the candidate can start, if they need any visa transfers, things like that. So the more information we can give the company, the more likely we are to make a placement together and just have a really good partnership. So in this case, you can see Ben sent a candidate out to the team. We always put in our intake what we were pitching to the person and then also usually where we got them, which most of the time is LinkedIn. So in this case, it looks like he used his Facebook pitch. We were sourcing for Facebook. And we also have other teams. So at the bottom, you'll see which companies that were sent to the candidate. So in this case, it was Facebook and Nuvo. Since then, he sent Nuvo over to this candidate. They're interested. That's my company. So I now need to send this resume over to Nuvo and give them as much information as possible that's a fit for them. So first, I'm going to, of course, include the resume. In this case, Nuvo is looking for, they're a small team. They're looking for someone who can join as a tech leader who's still very hands-on, but can eventually grow into what would be considered a CTO role. So it's really important that we've got the startup experience. And so let's read this intake of what Ben sent out. We can see that he has been a CTO and a manager at startups, so that's great. Prefers management, but also open to 100% IC, which means individual contributor role. So this is all good, and I actually like to send in bullet points to my team so that they can have this information really easily available to read. So I'll say, hey team, check out Francis and let me know if you'd like to get an intro call set up. So when I'm copying and pasting, I don't want to include everything on this because a lot of this info isn't super relevant to them. So I'm just going to include the things that would make sense. So in this case, obviously he's been a CTO, managing startups, and then the percentage of time that he wants to be coding or doing management work. And so that's super important. Anytime you talk to anyone who's a manager or CTO, meaning they're a little hands off from the code, you want to figure out what percentage they're open to coding. So in this case, it's great that he's open to 100% coding and that he's also had that leadership experience. So obviously we'll include that. Still enjoys coding and working close with the product. Great. Backend leaning with Rails, Go, and DevOps. Likes learning and working with new technologies. Super important for that. In this case, Nuvo works in Ruby on Rails. They also use some Go and Python, so it's really good that he's got that experience and that he's also open to working with new technologies. So again, really important to disclose that. He prefers building teams, doesn't like legal work and admin side. Not super important because that's not even relevant to the role, so I don't need to include that. The fact that he just started looking is good to note. Some of our companies move really slowly, and so we want them to have more of a sense of an urgency. So if that's the case, always let your company know, yes, he just started, but he's really active. So let's get him through the process quickly, or let's keep reading, not in a rush, flexible to move faster if a team really likes. Okay, with 6-week timeline. So, okay, great. So we already have an exact time week here. So we can include that. We never want to say not in a rush at all because as you can see, he's saying he can move faster for a team that he likes. So we don't want to say he's not in a rush at all and then find out next week, well, he found a team he really likes and he's going on site there. So we want to, be obviously very honest and say they're open to 6 weeks, but that they would also move quickly if they found something else. So keep that in mind. Prefers office. Obviously, right now, everyone's working remotely with the idea that most teams are going to go back to the office once this pandemic is over. So noting that he lives in San Francisco is great. We see he also has a family, wants to be home for dinner every night. I don't really need to note that because I know that at Nuvo, they only work until about 5 p.m. every night, and that they're very flexible for people that have a family. So I would just note that he lives in San Francisco. And obviously I'll clean up all these notes and make sure it's in the right format later. Nuvo is in San Francisco, so that's great. That'll be a good selling point for them. We always note, no matter what, their work authorization, just because we want the team to be aware that if they need some kind of transfer, that they need to get that started right away, just so that they know what they're in for time-wise and cost-wise there. Now, we see he's interested in working in a small to mid-sized team. In this case, obviously super relevant because we know that Nuvo is a smaller team. So I would, of course, note that in there. Sometimes people just don't have a preference. If they don't have a preference, you don't need to note anything because it's just extra space in there. Okay, and then compensation is really important. This is a tricky one because legally, you can't ask someone their salary if you work at the company paying them. And we really don't need it. What's more important is knowing what they're looking for next. And that the reason we want that is because if a company can only pay up to $200K and someone's saying, I need $250K base minimum, that's just not a match. So I don't want to waste the candidate's time. I don't want to waste the company's time if it's just not going to be a fit in the end. Let's read what this one says. His last role was $200K base with RSUs. He understands companies of different stages and funding, looking for at least 200 to 250K total comp. So that's a pretty big range, but when we say total comp, that's a makeup of the base, the RSUs or options, as well as any bonuses. So this I would include in there just so that Nuvo knows what he's targeting and they can keep that in mind throughout the interview process as well as towards the when he's getting an offer later. And I actually would include all of this because I think it's super relevant to note that he used to make 200K base and that he's also flexible as far as if a company's a startup. That just shows that he really is down to put in the work and work on a smaller team. Some people will say, I really want to work at a startup, but I have to make 300K a year. Well, unfortunately, that just doesn't match up for most startups. So it's important that we're on the same page, especially with smaller teams on salary. His motivators are that he's looking for a dog-friendly office, and then a few other things. So in this case, I don't know if that's a deal breaker. So I would email Ben back in this situation and say, hey, is the dog-friendly office, is that a requirement or is that just something that will be really good in the end if a company does have that? So I want to find out before I send if this is a deal breaker. And then I also really like to include the LinkedIn here. I think it's super easy for a team to just hop over, look at their LinkedIn. Not everybody writes a great resume, so it's nice to put it in there. Great. So that's it. I would clean this all up and then I would shoot it over like this. You can see here the left compared to the right. It's quite a bit shorter, but it also includes all of the relevant information to the company. And if I'm just sending over a resume saying, hey, let me know if you want to set up a call, that's not really of value to the team. What's really valuable is all of this info in here that they're able to use that with the resume to determine if this person is really a fit for them beyond just what they see on the resume. So I would type in my company here, send it off, and wait for them to get back about an interview.
And that's how we send a resume. It's super easy to be of high value to your companies without being a resume pusher in the industry. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the comments below. Make sure you like and subscribe. We'll be back here next Thursday with Brianna. Have a great week.